Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I'm not here to hype a piece of gear that looks good on paper. I'm trying to help you figure out whether the PreSonus StudioLive Series 324 actually fits the way you work, and if it's worth the money you're about to spend. In the next few minutes, we'll walk through the real-world setup, the day-to-day workflow, and the hidden trade-offs that most spec sheets gloss over, so you can avoid the common buyer's remorse that comes from grabbing a digital rack mixer without really knowing how it will sit in your signal chain. First off, let's talk about the kind of situation that makes a digital rack mixer a sensible purchase. If you're running a small club, a church worship team, a mobile recording rig, or a semi-professional podcast studio, you probably already know the pain of juggling a stack of analog consoles, a separate interface, and a patch bay. Every time you add a new mic or a line source, you end up digging for a spare input, rerouting cables, and hoping you didn't accidentally mute something critical. That uncertainty is the exact problem the StudioLive 24 tries to solve. A fully recallable, 32-channel digital core that lives in a 1U rack space, with enough I/O to handle a moderate-sized live or studio setup, and a tight integration with PreSonus' own DAW, Studio One Pro. The most immediate question most buyers have is, do I really need a digital rack mixer? Or can I just use an audio interface and a software mixer? The answer hinges on how much on-the-fly mixing you do. The 24R gives you 24 locking combo mic/line inputs, each with PreSonus fat channel processing, vintage EQ, and compressor modes that can be applied to every channel. In a live setting, that means you can dial in a warm vocal tone or tame a harsh instrument without reaching for an external processor. The ability to recall those settings is a huge time saver. Once you've saved a scene, you can pull it up in seconds for the next gig, rather than redialing every knob. For a house band that rehearses in the same space every week, that recallability translates into more rehearsal time and less setup time. Now, let's get into the practical workflow. The 24R is a rack-mountable unit, so you'll need a standard 19-inch rack or a sturdy shelf. Plug the power, hook your microphones and line sources into the 24 combo inputs. The locking connectors are solid, which is a plus when you're constantly plugging and unplugging gear on a tour. On the back, you have a 4040 USB 2.0 interface and a 5555 AVB Ethernet port. The USB side makes the unit act like a high-quality audio interface for your computer, giving you 40 input and 40 output channels for multi-track recording in Studio One. If you're working in a more complex environment, the AVB port lets you connect the mixer to other AVB-compatible devices, stage boxes, Dante routers, or additional PreSonus consoles, and keep all those signals synced over a single Ethernet cable. In practice, I've seen engineers run a 16-channel stage box on a single Cat5e cable to a front-of-house console, which dramatically reduces cable clutter. The 16 FlexMixes are where the 24R shows its versatility. Those mixes can be assigned as a UX sends, subgroups, or matrix mixes, depending on the show. For a live band, you might use 4 of them as monitor mixes for the musicians, 4 as FX sends for reverb and delay, and the remaining 8 for subgroups that feed the main PA. Because each FlexMix can be fully routed to any of the 55 AVB outputs, you can also send a separate mix to a recording device or a live stream encoder without needing an extra hardware splitter. That kind of routing flexibility is often the reason a house of worship decides to upgrade from a simple analog mixer. You get one piece of gear that does mixing, routing, and multi-track capture all at once. What about the software side? The package includes a full license for Studio One Pro, which is a real selling point if you were already planning to buy a DAW. The integration is seamless. Any channel you set up in the 24R appears instantly in Studio One's mixer view, and any changes you make in the DAW, like inserting a third-party plugin, can be sent back to the hardware for live monitoring. That two-way link is something you don't get with a generic USB interface. If you're a producer who likes to record a live show and then mix it later in the same session, the workflow feels almost like a single, unified system. Let's balance that with a few practical drawbacks. First, the USB connection is still limited to USB 2.0. In most cases, 4040 channels at 48 kHz works fine. But if you're trying to push 96 kHz or higher, you'll notice the bandwidth ceiling, and you might have to drop a few inputs or stick to the AVB network for those high-resolution streams. Second, The learning curve is real. The front panel is compact, and most of the routing is done via the on-screen editor that you